मिलावे की बीतक जय श्री आज्ञा धनी की सोबाता बुजरक बोलिए श्री धाम के धनी की जय। Pranam to all of you. On the third day of Beetak discourse, let's review that a little bit. We talked about how the tradition of Beetak discourse started in the first place. We introduced Lal Dasi. We also know him by the name of Mahamati for the matter of this Beetak discourse. Although we say Mahamati Prananath, and this Beetak discourse will know Lal Dasi by that name as well, that attribute as well. We'll go into details of why Lal Dasi is called Mahamati. Mahamati is the incarnation of great knowledge, Mahan Buddhi ko avatar, someone with a great intellect, awakened consciousness, as we can say. So we also talked about Lal Dasi's Beetak, the biography written by Lal Dasi, which contains more than 4,300 verses, and what it contains in it. Today we'll get into Mahakarana of creation. In the lack of a better word, Mahakarana is like principal reason. The Guruji said the causeless cause. So we'll get into that. We'll go into the depth of Mahakarana. But we will also, before we get into the Mahakarana, we will get to know why it is imperative, significant for us to know the importance of this concept. Wow, how does the understanding of this term helps in understanding the questions humanity, scholars, philosophers had and could not find answers to for a time immemorial. So let's start. We talked about in yesterday's session a little bit, we touched upon it, that nothing existed before the creation of this world. Rig Veda, one of the most ancient scriptures of Hinduism, talks about this matter a little bit. In the 10th chapter of Rig Veda, we find this. Nasada sinno sadasitta dani nasi drazo no vyoma paroyat. Which means, prior to creation, neither truth existed nor the falsity. And also did not exist were the atoms in the subtle sky, the void, Shushma Akas, nothing existed before the creation of this world. I also quoted yesterday from one of the Hindu scriptures, Durva Samahimna Stotra, that prior to creation, Brahma, Vishnu, Mahesh did not exist. The deities, the demons, and the 5 elements that makes up the entire universe didn't exist. And what also didn't exist were the directions, like as we call east, west, north, south. Death didn't exist back then. The Vedas were non-existent. The ritualistic ceremonies, the sun, the moon, even Adi Narayana didn't exist, that many consider him to be the Lord Supreme. None of these entities were created at one point. Only the Lord Supreme in his ever radiant form, in that divine form existed, residing in the eternally radiating supreme heaven that we know by the name of Paramdham. So we are getting into Mahakarana. So the question comes now, if all that existed was Paramdham, all that was left was the perfection the effulgence, the divinity, the bliss pervading that beautiful abode of Sri Raji Maharaj, Sri Krishna, the Paramdham. Then what prompted it? What caused the creation? So apparently, it must be the Lord Supreme, because no other beings were existing back then before the creation. It must be the Lord Supreme Aksharat Sri Krishna, residing beyond the infallible Akshar Brahma. That's why we call Paramatma as Aksharate. Probably he conceived the creation of this world. The conceptualization of creation must come from Lord Supreme. The reason yet unknown to the world. The world was not cognizant of the reasoning behind creation, but it's revealed by Mahamati Prananath, the Paramatma incarnate, the Lord Supreme incarnate. That is what we know by the term Mahakaran of creation, the reason behind creation, the intention behind creation. That is what Mahakaran is. Until one understands this concept, the questions about human suffering, God's intention, the concept of eternal tussle as stated in Bible between the God and the demon cannot be properly understood. Until we understand the concept of Mahakarana, these questions continue to linger. These questions continue to bog the minds of even the most geniuses. Until we understand this concept, we begin to question everything, from God's potency to His judgment, from God's benevolence to His omnipresence and omniscience. Going further, people begin to question the existence of God because they cannot find the harmony between what God stands for, the attributes given to God: merciful, omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, and what His creation truly looks like. In crude language, I would say, all messed up. A lot of people say the world is all messed up. If God is all powerful, everywhere, all knowing, all loving, why does God allow suffering? Why is there so much discord in this world? So people do not find the harmony between who God is and what the world looks like. That is when people begin to question even the existence of God. As we said before, nothing existed before the creation of this world. And there is also the concept that God is all-knowing. This is where it gets interesting. Questions arise. How did all-merciful, all-loving God create such a miserable world as ours, full of suffering, hatred, killing, discords, and biases? The second question, how? How could this all happen? How could a world be created by the God who is Sat Chit Anand, absolute? When God is bliss absolute and God is everywhere in this world, how could suffering exist in this world? How could He create the world full of suffering? How? Why and how are the questions that come in our mind until we understand this concept of Mahakara. God is all truth. Truth is something that never changes. However, the world is full of falsity, untruth, because it is ever changing. The world is mercurial. Nothing is a constant in this world. So, how could the world be such, created by the God Supreme? We said God is the knowledge absolute. God knows everything. God is omniscient. If that is the case, why is there so much ignorance in this world? That is the question. Why were Vedas given to humanity? Upanishads, Puranas, Abrahamic scriptures like the Bible, the Quran, why did they have to be given to humanity in the first place? If God knows everything and God resides everywhere, God is omnipresent. In that case, God is bliss absolute. In God's abode, in Paramdham, there is nothing but happiness. There is nothing but the perennial bliss. If that is the case, and God resides in the heart of everyone, as Sri Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara Sarva Bhutanam Hridarsarjuna Tishtati. God resides in the heart of all living beings. If that is the case, and God is all merciful and all bliss, how is there so much suffering in this world? Dear Sundar Satsi, these are the pressing questions that very few people, very few scriptures have convincing answers to, because they do not understand the Mahakarana of creation, why creation happened in the first place. Many other questions arise. If God is all-powerful, another question comes. Why does God allow suffering in this world? Okay, the Christian take on that is God did not intend to create a world like this. God created the world in a different thought process, conceptualizing it differently. But what happened? Adam and Eve disobeyed God. Right? So the evil started. However, all-powerful God should be able to stop it. There are some evil people, corrupt-minded ones, but if God is all-loving and omnipotent, all-powerful, He should be able to stop them from causing harm to innocent lives. Isn't it true? Let me give you a few examples of that. In December 14, 2012, a mass shooting happened in Newton, Connecticut, in one of the elementary schools there. A 20-year-old maniac, Adam Lanza, shot and killed 26 people, including 20 children. Let that sink in. 20 children between the age of 6 and 7 in an elementary school, and 6 adults trying to protect them. He killed his mother first, took the guns that she bought legally, took up with her truck, and killed that many children and adults in such a pure institution of education. The very next day, interesting thing happened. CNN published an opinion article, a blog on that tragedy. And the title was, Massacre of Children Leaves Many Asking, Where is God? Where is God? The article detailed how the religious scholars, priests, rabbis viewed the tragedy as the evidence of the prevalence of evil in the world and the free will. Some religious scholars even began to ask people to ask questions, express doubts about God or anger. This is a time to go deep and pray. One of the renowned, prominent Christian pastors said, if you have a problem with God, he said, if you have a problem with God, shake a fist or two at him. If he is God, he is going to answer. And if he is in control, he'll find a way to let you, he will find a way to let you know. I read that article yesterday. I saw some interesting comments. One of the comments said, I ask this question all the time, actually my whole life. Then I learned something along the way. Humans do not want God to interfere. It is like a child that says, I can do it myself. But I still have to wonder, where were the guardian angels? What about the warning voices to the parents? God could say, through these angels, that your child is in danger. Do not let them go to school today. Over and over, we hear of how heavenly divine beings are here to help us and protect us. Yet, we do not see it. There was another comment. Where's God? Same place as always. Not here. These incidents often shake the layman's faith in God because they do not have an explanation of why God allows suffering. Let me give you other examples. In 2013, a massive flood killed and swept more than 5,000 pilgrims in Kedarnath, Uttarakhand. As you might know, Kedarnath is one of the most prominent pilgrimage sites for Hindus all over the world. Where was God? How could God seem so uninterested in saving not the ordinary people? They were the pilgrims coming to see him. Why didn't God save them from the calamity? How do we make sense of these things? Mass shootings that has ravished the churches, the mosques. How can we justify the killing in the name of God? The terrorism and all the other evils that happen in the world, somehow motivated by these religious beliefs. Here's the contradiction. It is believed that God is omnipresent, omniscient, and omnipotent. He is also all-loving, merciful, and benevolent. If that is the case, why does it feel like the innocent are the ones that mostly suffer? Mahamati Prananath asked this question in Kirantan Grantha, in one of the books. He says, he questions actually the statements by religious scholars. He asked, if you think God is omnipresent in this world, why is there so much ignorance? Why were the Vedas and other scriptures came about in this world? Why is there so much suffering in this world? Bhai re Brahma Gyani Brahma Dikhalao tum sakala mein sai dekhi. ए संसार शकल है शूपना तो तुम पार ब्रह्म की उपेक्षा. Mahamati Prananath says, who's the experience of truth? Please show me the Brahma, show me the Lord. You see Brahma everywhere in this world. However, this world is a mere dream. How can you find God in mere dream? Because God is the truth absolute. The world is nothing but Maya, illusion created by God. I already quoted what Bhagavad Gita says about this. The Supreme Lord dwells in the heart of all living beings. O Arjuna, according to their karmas, he directs the wandering of the souls who are seated on the machine made of the material energy. Ishvara Sarvabhutanam Hridaya Sarjanatishthati. There have been different opinions, different arguments about why this happens. Why is there so much suffering in this world? Why does God allow suffering? It is easy for a theist, an atheist, or even for the theist, the one who believes in God. He may casually say that God is not perfectly good and therefore does not prevent human from suffering. Or can say that although God is all loving, all good, all powerful, he's not capable of solving the problem of human beings. Yet, such a depiction of God, either he's not perfectly good, so he's not taking care of human needs and human suffering, or he's good but he is not capable of dealing with that. That is not compatible with the image drawn by both Abrahamic religious traditions as well as Hinduism. It does not sync up. But how does a believer argue? How does one truly understand this state of the world? God created this. God's everywhere. God's all-knowing. God is all-loving. Yet, we find God to be distant. We do not find God's intimacy. It is very hard for people to realize the grace of God in this world. Why? Dear Sundarsaji, this is one of the most pressing questions that humanity has for a long time. That is why it's going to take a little longer to understand. We are going deeper into understanding this. So let's get into what Christianity says about this suffering in the world, why God allows suffering in the world. So I initially mentioned a little bit about this. Christianity says God didn't design the earth to have evil and suffering in it. He made it perfect. But it was humans to whom he gave free will, who allowed the devil, the demon, to turn humanity away from God, resulting in an imperfect world full of sin and evil as a part of it. It was Adam and Eve who disobeyed God, who did not choose what God created, who didn't listen to the words of God and brought evil into this world. God is not evil, nor did he create evil. Humans brought evil within themselves by selfishly choosing demon over God. That is their argument. Christianity also says that although evil is here, suffering is here, it is temporary. it will eventually be destroyed. This is a hope a believer has in Christianity. There is a new world coming in which there will be no more tears or pain or suffering. The paradise lost, the haven that is lost along the way would be restored. God will correct, rectify all the wrongs, and put away evil once and for all in His time. Listen to that. In His time. We do not know when that happens. The book written by Josh McDowell and Don Stewart in a book titled Answers. I'm quoting from their book. It says, although the Bible informs us of how and why evil came about, it does not tell us why God allowed this to happen. However, we do know that God is all wise and probably has the reasons for allowing this to happen. But this is beyond our understanding, beyond our comprehension. Now, this Christian take on suffering in this world, or why God allows suffering in this world, brings more questions into our mind. First, they do not know the reason why God allows this. They only know how it came about. They do not know when exactly is it that all the evil would be destroyed once and for all. When is that new world coming? The concept is totally opposite of what Eastern religious traditions say. In the Vedas, in the Upanishads, in Mahamati Prananath does not talk about the world being a better place. They do not say that all the evils and suffering from the world would vanish one day, just out of the blue. If Adam and Eve brought evil to the world, to humanity, God knew it all along. God knew that they were going to disobey Him. If He knew that was going to happen, why the whole of humanity has to pay the price for it? They made the mistake. It is okay for them to be expelled from the Garden of Eden, but why all the humanity is suffering? The Christian take on that is, when Jesus sheds His blood to wash away the sins of those people, wash away the original sin caused by Adam and Eve, that befalled on all of humanity, it would be a better place. It's been 2,500 years since Jesus, 2,100 years since Jesus passed away. The world is not a better place. That is why a lot of people ask questions about the teachings of Christianity. That is one of the reasons why millions of Christians have turned away from Christianity and the teachings of the Bible. Because it does not explain convincingly why the world is in the state it is today. Let's have a look at Islamic take, what Quran says about suffering. According to Quran, God is perfectly good and omnipotent, all-powerful. Yet, those attributes given to God did not entail that He stops all the suffering from this world. God might have a plan which would morally justify God allowing suffering. And there might be certain functions which prevent God from stopping pain and suffering in this world. Let that sink in for a moment. There might be some logic behind this. There might be some reason why God does not and cannot stop the suffering in this world. How does that make sense when you are saying that God is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all-merciful? How does that explain why more than 4.5 million lives have been lost to COVID-19? If God was all-powerful and all-knowing, He should have been able to stop it. What logic could it justify? What justification could God give? Oh, I could not do this. Quran also says, suffering me is probably necessary to produce more human happiness than a world without it. It's because of suffering that humans rejoice. It is due to the suffering that humans find more happiness. In Surah Al-Baqarah, chapter 2 of Quran 216, but perhaps you hate a thing and it is good for you. And perhaps you love a thing that is bad for you. And Allah knows why, while you know not. It is probably a good thing that you have to suffer every now and then, because suffering might bring you more good. That is what Quran says. Quran also lays out some of the other potential reasons why God allows suffering. Suffering is there in this world because of free will, the choice we have about the course of action, the direction our life takes. And the pain and suffering is the price we pay for the greater blessing of free will. And yet it is through this suffering we establish our relationships to Allah. It is probably to establish that relationship. The Quranic explanation of suffering in this world is also that suffering can be good for our growth. While it is true to some extent, why create a world in the first place? Since we are already here, and it is during the time of difficulties that we are most likely to remember God, reach out to God, pray to God, it is true. While it is true, why let humans suffer so much in the first place? Why create a world full of misery? The Quranic explanation is also this. It is to test you. He who created death and life to test you as to which of you is better in conduct. He is the Almighty, all-forgiving. Quran says, nobody has ever entered paradise without any trial or test. So why do you think you can make it to heaven without going through all of this? Again, it begs a question. The Quranic explanation begs a question. Why let this happen? Why create a world in such an abyss? Quran does not explain the reasoning behind the creation of universe. Only Allah knows, Quran says. Until we know the Mahakaran of creation, until we know why God created such an imperfect world, for what matters, for what purpose it is to serve. I read in one of the books, at one of the surveys that I found, that more than 15,000 Muslims renounce Islam every day. It is because the holy book of Quran fails to answer these pressing questions of humanity. These questions come. when the larger tragedy happened in this world, the flooding, the hunger, the pandemic like this that we have, the mass shootings in churches, in schools, in mosques. Hinduism also has a take on this. Hinduism does not say God created evil. It does not also say that God allows this from happening. It says it is of our making. It is humans that invite suffering in their little world, in their lives. Hinduism says suffering is the integral part of our lives. And some of the causes of suffering as explained in Hinduism are the impermanence, which makes life so insecure and uncertain. Karma, the law of karma, delusion and ignorance caused by Maya, the repeated births and deaths, duality, attachment to the worldly things, worldly pursuits, lack of faith in God Himself, lack of discretion or judgment. These are the reasons why there is suffering in this world. Hinduism primarily focuses on the laws of karma, the cause and effect. Suffering happens because of our thoughts, our karma, but not imposed by God, or allowed by God for that matter. Because of these ambiguous, less than convincing arguments, people have turned away from God. They have lost their faith in God. They have lost their faith in humanity. That is probably the reason why so many people say today that I would rather be more humane than a believer, because so many bad things have happened in the name of religion, in the name of God. People question, people ask themselves and others who argue that we should pray to God. They say, why do I care about God? A religion, for that matter, is they are the source of greater instability, division and hatred in this world. Take Holy Crusade for the example. Millions of Muslims, millions of non-believers were killed by the Christian crusaders. Take the time during the lives of Prophet Muhammad and years thereafter, when millions of non-believers were killed by the Muslims. Like I said before, until we understand the Mahakaran of creation, Sundarsaji, we cannot have a convincing, compelling, and irresistible answer to these questions. These questions have made even the brightest minds numb. As we learn this concept of Mahakaran of creation, we understand the true nature of this world, why it was designed the way it was, and why God allows suffering in the world, and if God should take the blame for it. Sundarsaji, let's delve into that for a moment. On the second chapter, Mahamati Prananaji through Laldasi talks about the Mahakaran of creation. अब कहूँ फेर के मूल मिलावे की बीतक का, जैसी आज्ञा धनी की सो बातां बुझ रखा. It is in that heavenly abode, the ever-effulgent, ever-radiating Paramdham, the creation was conceptualized. So Laldasi says, now let's get to Paramdham. Let's get to the state. Let's get to that time when nothing of this, nothing like this existed. Na Ishwara na Mula Prakriti Tadina ki kahu apapi. Let's get into that. As we said earlier, before the creation happened, nothing existed but the Supreme Paramdham. In Paramdham, Sri Raji, Sri Krishna, his bliss part, Radhaji or Syamaji, and the 12,000 consorts, 12,000 Brahma Atmas resided eternally in ever blissful state in Paramdham. Laldas is taking us there. In one of the books, Mahamati Prananath talks about the events leading up to creation. In Paramdham, Mahamati Prananath says, Hakkaku kama kachu aur nahi devi ruhu ladalachu. God does not do anything but shower his love and grace to his souls, 12,000 in numbers. And there is always an eternal, I would not say conflict because that gives a negative connotation, but there is always this questioning of whose love is greater. Raji says, I love you guys more than you do. And all the consorts unanimously say, Hey Raji Maharaj, we love you more than you do. Because we are greater in numbers. We are 12,000 of us, and you are the one. All that we do is to please you, is to bring smiles in your beautiful face. So there has always been this question, who has a greater love for one another? Also, since we've been eternally living in Paramdham, we fail to truly realize how fortunate we are to experience the company, to experience the intimacy of Sri Raji. As we all know that, we begin to take things for granted as time goes on, right? Let's say when we buy a new car, we maintain it really well. Probably we take it to car wash every other week. We clean the inside and out. But as time goes on and your car gets older, you begin to care less about it. The first day you buy your car, you invite your friends. You give them parties. But you do not do that in the third year because the happiness from your accomplishments, your possessions, your successes gradually subsides. And we begin to take it for granted. Okay, I have the car. Now what? It's good that I have it, but the happiness from it is not as intense, as great as it was when I had the car the first time. In the eternal abode of Paramdham, the consorts of Raji, the 12,000 Sakhis, could not fully understand could not fully experience the love of God, the bliss of Paramdham. So Raji thought, there is a way I can handle this. So Raji conceptualized this. Raji thought of this. एक पातशाही अरस की दूजा बाहिदत की सकसो दिखलाउने रूहों को पहले दिल में लइहा का what God thought of first. The concept that came in the mind of Sri Raji is what the Mahakarana is. God wanted us to see this world. God wanted us to be awake for a moment, for a quick moment, that if we could see the opposite of suffering, the opposite of happiness, the opposite of bliss, then we could realize how lucky we are to be in the company of Sri Raji Maharaj in Paramdham. That is how the seed of creation happened. The seed was germinated in the mind of the Lord. That is the Mahakarana of creation. Because we could not fully understand the love of God, there was always a fight. There was always these questions about whose love is greater. So God wanted to give an answer to that question once and for all. Let's find out who loves more, you or me. And secondly, God wanted us to experience the bliss of Paramdham even more, because we could not fully realize it. Now, there is no power outages in Nepal as it used to, right? We survived through 18 hours of load shedding in Nepal. We could only see the lights during the day when we didn't actually need it. Now we have it all the time. And when the light goes out for 15 minutes, we realize what a great job Kulman Gising had done to the Nepalese. We feel lucky to have him in the past as the chief of Nepal Electric Authority, Nepal Vidyut Pradhikaran. Similarly, when we experience the suffering, when we experience those disadvantages, then we truly value the availability of the opposite, the availability of happiness in Paramdham. That is how the concept of creation was made. That is what the Mahakarana of creation is. Dear Sundarsaji, we will go into depth. So what happened today in Paramdham that led to creation? We just started off. Today we are ending this actually with the concept of Mahakarana, why God thought of sending us, or in a way we can say creating this. Because it is actually not the Lord Supreme that creates the world, but it is Akshara Brahma, the infallible Brahma, who creates the world. So we can say that God envisioned this and sent us to this world